Well, hello again. In week 3, we looked at the origin of policy, and we saw that policies are driven sometimes by the Congress of the United States, sometimes by the state legislature, sometimes by organizations that lobby for certain policies on campus, and then sometimes by the inherent values of the founders of the institution and the people who lead and teach at the institution. There are very many ways that a policy can be brought into effect. And now in week 4, we're going to be talking about how these policies are formulated and compiled and transmitted and understood on the local campus. Next week, in week 5, we'll be talking about the fact that sometimes the policies of the institution conflict with the policies of the state or federal government or just the national mood. And we're going to be discussing the ways that institutions handle that kind of conflict. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. That's week 5. Let's talk a little bit about week 4. In week 4, you'll be looking at Kaplan and Lee again, the law of higher education, and particularly you'll be in chapter or section 3, which deals with the institution's faculty and the laws that pertain relating to the faculty. The college and its faculty, part 3, in Kaplan and Lee. When you read Kaplan and Lee this week, try to formulate your own definition of shared governance as it exists on campus, and get a feel for collective bargaining. Where is collective bargaining applicable in higher education? Where is it not so applicable? And what's the reason for the difference? I'll give you a hint. The reason for the difference is the yeshiva decision. And if you master any of the decisions in week 4, you should be able to explain the yeshiva decision, how the case came about, how the court ruled, and the effect that ruling has had on American higher education. It's very important to know about the yeshiva decision. We're also going to be in week 4 looking at the ways in which colleges and universities compile, well, first of all, write, and then compile their policies, and the ways that they teach those policies to the people who work for the college and the people who study at the college. There are very many ways to go about this. Not very many, in my experience, not very many colleges and universities do a real good job of compiling and transmitting and conveying and teaching people the policies of the institution. A lot of work needs to be done, and wherever you go, you'll want to ask first for a copy of the institution's policy book, and then you'll want to spend some time with that book to see whether or not it hangs together. Are the policies clearly enunciated? Can they be understood? Does the institution make an effort to acquaint faculty with the policies and their implications? And the same goes for the students who are studying at the college or university. What I'd like you to do, one of the assignments, is to compare a couple of colleges or universities in terms of how they compile and convey the institutional policies. You'll see through that comparison that there's no really accepted cookbook formula. Everybody does it their own way, and you'll find, I think, that an interesting experience. If you'd like, take a look at some of the policies that are online. A lot of institutions now put their institutional policies online, and if you want to use a couple of colleges or universities that you're personally familiar with, that would be just fine. What I'd like you to do is to point out the similarities and differences in terms of how they compile and convey their institutional policies. The other assignment that I'm asking you to spend some time on this week is to review what's called policy governance. So policy governance is an approach to policy making that starts with the idea that the general policy should come first and the more narrow policies second, so that in each area of the university's life and function, there is a general policy and then some subsidiary policies, all of which are in conformity with one another. This approach to policy making was first proposed by a man who at the time lived in Indiana. His name was John Carver. Now he and his wife Miriam Carver live in Atlanta, and that's where they do most of their work. They consult all around the world, not just with colleges and universities, and they try to teach policymakers a method called policy governance. It's in contrast to the traditional approach to policy making. Usually in the past, policy making has meant waiting until some bad thing happens and then making a rule against allowing the conditions to exist that created that problem, and that's called oversight. So there is a kind of tradition, I would call it the traditional approach to policy making, that says we've got to back up those who work and study at the college, and so the board will put forth some general rules that guide the staff in the work that they do. Most of those rules, as I said, could be used to write a history of all the bad things that have ever happened at this place, and that's the way most policy books read. If there's been a bad fire at a college, you'll find a lot of policies on fire prevention, and so on. Well, you take a look and see what you find as you compare policy governance to more traditional forms of governance, and that is one of the assignments for the week. Next week, we'll talk about how policies of the institution sometimes conflict with the policies of the culture in which it exists, but we'll wait for week 5 for that. Have a good week in week 4, and look forward to talking to you soon.